It was that mysterious stone pillar, the stone pillar that was broken half in the Sky Castle, got fixed for some inexplicable reason after Faye used it to purify the stained world stone. After that, it had been living in Faye's body, but it just wouldn't respond to Faye's calls at all. However, at this moment when Faye's life was in danger, it lightly shivered. Due to this shiver, a phenomenon occurred. It was an incredible power that rushed out of Faye's body. If Domenech's sword of fire judgment was as powerful as the energy of a god, the power emitted by the mysterious stone pillar was like the anger of the king of gods. No words could describe this terrifying power. Nothing could stop it. The huge orange fire sword couldn't do anything to this power. It felt like everything was happening at the reverse. Like a flame that was being blown in the wind, the orange fire sword that was more than 1,000 meters long got smaller and smaller. What is this? Domenech's eyes opened wide. The energy that appeared in Faye's body even scared him. A sun-class lord. It made him want to kneel and worship. Even Yasin, his nemesis, didn't bring him this level of suffocating pressure. In less than 10 seconds, the gigantic orange fire sword disappeared. The sky that was extremely dark in comparison brightened up, and everything was returned to their original forms as if nothing happened. This insane power that was on the level of the king of gods came sudden and left fast as well. Faye was stunned, and he lightly opened his hands. The metal gauntlets already cracked and fell onto the ground, and the durability of a mortal king's soul cage dropped below 3 digits, revealing some of Faye's skin through the holes. However, the black and completed burned skin and limbs on Faye's body were instantly healed by this great energy. His skin was smooth and soft as if he was reborn. Such a terrifying power. It is unchallengeable. This power came out of Faye's body, so he was able to get a feel for it. As soon as that power appeared, Faye felt like he was the king of the gods. He felt like he was the ruler of the world and could decide on everyone's life. He could make flowers to blossom, force trees to dry out, and create heaven and hell. All of that originated from the light shivering of that mysterious stone pillar. Unfortunately, it seemed like that stone pillar was very cheap. After it saved Faye from death, it wasn't willing to lend Faye any more of its power. It didn't matter how hard Faye tried. It wouldn't respond. That? You couldn't have that kind of power. How are you capable of obtaining power beyond the realm of mortals? Domenech dashed away for 100 meters and looked back at Faye with eyes filled with shock. That power was too mighty. If he were lightly touched by it, he would be turned into specks of dust. At that moment, he felt like he sensed his death. Just as he was about to give up and surrender, that unimaginable power suddenly disappeared as if it never existed. He was shocked, and he stared at Faye, trying to figure something out. Faye didn't have an expression on his face. He took out another bottom of full rejuvenation potion from his storage ring and poured it into Little Raccoon's mouth. Soon, this little guy woke up, and it started to squeak after seeing Domenech, who was standing not too far away. Its hair and tail stood up, and it looked around anxiously, trying to get Faye to leave this place as soon as possible. Behind Faye, energy mists were being breathed in and exhaled out by Hazel Bank in a unique manner. It felt like a giant was breathing and affecting the natural elements in the area. This was a sign showing that the advancement process of becoming a Sun-class lord was almost completed. No, this isn't your power. Impossible! As he sensed the aura on Hazel Bank, Domenech started to lose patience. As crazy lights appeared in her eyes, he decided to test Faye again. I don't believe that you can use that kind of power twice in a row. Take this world-ending meteor. As loud howling noises sounded, many flames appeared in the air. Then, a spherical meteor that was more than 10 meters long in diameter flew down from the sky, targeting Faye and Hazel Bank. As if this meteor was tearing the sky apart, it left a series of afterimages in the air. A serious expression appeared on Faye's face. He was already exhausted from the earlier battles. Although he looked like he could still battle, he was just putting on a show. In fact, he didn't even have the strength to hold onto his weapons, let alone stopping the giant meteor that was coming down from the sky. 100 meters! 50 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters, 3 meters. Faye didn't move, and he just stood there and sensed the energy inside the approaching meteor. The wind created by it alone was enough to suffocate him a little. However, the king had a relieved smile on his face. Boom! A surge of gray energy soared into the sky behind Faye. All the flames were extinguished by this energy instantly, and the meteor that was quickly approaching also got knocked back, disappeared into the sky after a few seconds like the seed of a dandelion. The danger was finally resolved. We would be both smashed into meat pastes if you move any later, Faye said as he calmed down. Since he was now safe, the last bit of strength he had supporting his body was gone, and he fell back into the throne of chaos after a little stagger. It is good that I made it. Now it is my turn. Hazelbank slowly stood up from the ground and waved his hand, taking away all the stealth array formations on the mountain. Without any energy surge on him, Hazelbank walked in thin air, creating a gray magic energy lotus under his feet every time he stood a step. He walked in front of Faye, blocking him and protecting him from Domenech. Just like how Faye battled Domenech and didn't back off even though he was going to be killed, Hazelbank was going to protect Faye this time. Although he wasn't able to move and speak during the advancement process, he witnessed what happened. Honestly, even Hazelbank himself didn't expect that Faye was willing to die for him. A person who the king met less than a month ago. Hazelbank had been around for hundreds of years, but he was stunned and touched like never before. He was calm and collected on the surface, but he was staring at Domenech with battle hungriness. Sensing this, Domenech quickly woke up from the shock that the sudden appearance of that mysterious power brought him. The wind fluttered his white robe, and he held onto his wand tightly. With a smile on his face, he said, "You advanced a lot faster than I anticipated. You are a genius as well. However, I have been a Sun-class lord for more than a year now, and you just advanced. You are still like a child who is learning to walk in my eyes. How dare you challenge me this recklessly? You talk too much." The undead mage waved his hand as if he was trying to get rid of a fly, and an invisible energy instantly dashed toward Domenech. Domenech got a little angry at Hazelbank's disrespectful move. Boom! Two completely different energies collided, and energy waves expanded outward, looking as beautiful as a firework. Eh? Puff! Domenech spat out a mouthful of blood and screamed afterward. With a shocked expression on his face, he turned around and tried to escape without saying anything. Too late. Hazelbank already anticipated this, and he waved his hand again emotionlessly. Whoosh! The world around them changed. As if an invisible hand spilled a giant bottle of ink in the sky, the bright sky suddenly darkened. Black cloud-like energy dashed out of Hazelbank's body and expanded outward, and the expansion speed was so fast that it instantly reached Domenech and enveloped him. Sun anomaly? You mastered your sun anomaly already? Domenech screamed desperately. Faye realized that everything around him changed as if he was now inside another world. The bright sky, huge mountains, and green grasses were now all gone. The world Faye was in right now was gloomy and isolated. Thick dark clouds were hanging low in the sky, and there was no wind. The atmosphere in here was desperate and sad. Those alone weren't shocking. What was shocking was that the ground in this unique world was made from white bones. There were so many bones that the landmass looked endless like an ocean, and there were blue will-o'-the-wisps dancing around, adding more chilliness to the atmosphere. Suddenly, as if they were commanded by something terrifying, the white bones started to move up and down like the waves in the ocean. The rough and ear-piercing bone-grinding noises sounded, adding more flavor to this dead and isolated world. Visible streaks of gray mists appeared from the bones, creating numerous images where all kinds of creatures were screaming and howling before their death. The terrifying images could tear people's minds and souls apart, scarring them for the rest of their lives. The gray mist was undead energy, and this was a world of death. It was Hazelbank's sun anomaly, path of the Grim Reaper. Like a true spectator, Faye lied on the throne of chaos comfortably and took out drinks and delicious dishes from his storage ring. The battle consumed too much of his energy and power, and he had to replenish them. Little Raccoon sat on Faye's lap and smiled as it held a bottle of wine and chewed on roasted meat. With a set of black armor on him, the undead mage stood in the sky like a demon deity. The red cape fluttered behind him quietly, looking like a pot of boiling blood. Standing on the ground, Domenech swallowed his saliva and enveloped himself with an energy flame. As he tried to defend against the corrosion of the undead energy, he looked around and observed everything. Soon he was shocked and desperate. "You are an undead mage? Who are you? You can become a Sun-class lord as an undead mage. You must be infamous." Domenech discovered the real energy that his opponent had, and his heart sunk. "My name is Hazel Bank," the undead mage answered. Domenech felt dizzy. This name alone was mighty, and it almost instantly obliterated the last line of defense in his mind. Hazelbank was a senior elder at the Undead Shrine, and he was one of the few elders who held a lot of power. Also, he was known as the man who was the closest to the Grim Reaper. Although the Holy Church in the end crushed the Undead Shrine, this man in front of him killed many top-tier masters of the Holy Church and escaped intact. For more than 100 years now, the Holy Church saw him as a nail in its heart and tried to hunt him down. Wanted posters of him were everywhere on the continent. However, every time he made an appearance, he only brought nightmares to the masters of the Holy Church who were after him. Top-tier masters like Hazelbank might have fallen below the Sun class due to the injuries over the years. However, once he came back to the realm of Sun class, his experience and techniques would allow him to defeat people like Domenech who were relatively inexperienced easily. King of Sham Board. Domenech suddenly thought of something and locked his eyes onto Faye. He shouted, "You dare to collude with an undead mage? As a god's favorite child, you dare to? Your words are ruining the feel. We aren't colluding, we are just partnering." Okay. It is just a partnership. On top of that, there is nothing strange about this. Faye laughed as he ate a grape. Everyone has their secrets. You can kill members of the Holy Church, and I can partner with an undead mage. What is strange about this? Domenech was at a loss for words. So, I must die today after knowing your secret? Domenech focused his attention back onto Hazelbank. He was shocked to hear this name since Hazelbank was a Sun-class lord more than 100 years ago. But he quickly calmed down somehow with the help of the insane pressure. Hazelbank didn't reply, but the murderous spirit in his eyes told Domenech everything. "Okay, let me see how powerful the man who is the closest to the Grim Reaper is." Domenech flew into the air. Orange flames rushed out of his body as if a volcano was erupting, and a huge orange fire sword that was about 800 meters long appeared as he chanted the obscure and mystic spell. It was clear that Domenech was secretly preparing this spell when he was speaking to Faye and Hazelbank. His casting speed was a lot faster than before. Sword of Fire Judgment. Strike! A vibration noise sounded, and the huge orange fire sword struck at Hazelbank with force. It was this strike that severely injured Faye. If it weren't for the help from that mysterious stone pillar, the king might have been chopped in half. This technique sure was powerful. However, Hazelbank didn't even move his eyelid. Only when the orange fire sword was about to touch his forehead, he lightly reached out his hand. He grasped onto thin air, and a huge white bone sword jumped into his hand from the sea of bones. It was made from numerous pieces of white bones that were of various sizes. Undead Furious Bone Sword. Strike! As Hazelbank shouted, the white bone sword moved even faster and blocked the orange fire sword before it could touch Hazelbank's forehead. Boom! A loud booming noise sounded after the two swords touched. Sword of Fire Judgment. That easily destroyed the set item, Bulkathos Children. Couldn't do anything to the white bone sword. It was stopped 5 centimeters away from Hazelbank's forehead, and it couldn't move any further. "You are too weak." Hazelbank shook his head and said. He raised his arm that was holding the huge white bone sword, and he easily pushed back the orange fire sword inch by inch. Even though Domenech roared and tried to strike down with more force, nothing was changed. It was like a fight between a child and an adult. It was extremely one-sided. Soon, the orange fire sword was pushed back by the white bone sword. As a series of crackling noises sounded, the orange fire sword shattered and returned to the pure fire elements before dispersing into the area. Faye, who was watching on the throne of chaos, was shocked by this scene as well. The power Hazelbank demonstrated was beyond the king's expectation, and the fact that he easily dismantled the ultimate technique of another Sun-class lord was impressive. Is this the power of undead energy? Domenech thought to himself as he backed off several meters. There was a streak of blood on his lips. He was injured by the repulsion force in Undead Furious Bone Sword, and he got a first-hand feel of the power of undead mages. It seemed like undead energy was a unique energy that was higher in level compared with the 5 basic elemental energies. No wonder it was said that the undead energy could harm the gods, and the undead mages were cursed and were hunted by the Holy Church. Just from that encounter alone, Hazelbank's power made Domenech, who already lost more than half of his Sun-class core, feel desperate. Something darker than the sunset and tastier than the blood. Fire elements, listen to your servant's wish. Concentrate on my hands. Let's merge our power. I'm willing to use my life energy to ignite the fire god's anger. Burn all the enemies? Domenech laughed with a crazy expression on his face. Ignite your core? Want to perish together? Too bad that I'm the god in here. Hazelbank was experienced, and he knew what Domenech wanted to do. He reached out his hands and started to chant. The undead energy in this world started to move. Suddenly, a huge white hand that was made from bones dashed out of the sea of bones and grabbed onto Domenech, who was about to unleash his most destructive attack. Then, more and more hands appeared and grabbed onto him. Soon, Domenech was wrapped by mountains of bones. The number 1 royal mage of the Leon Empire was constrained entirely in there. Like chains, the white bones connected and locked onto each other, and the undead energy enforced those connections, making the seal even tighter. In the end, a mountain that was more than 1,000 meters tall was formed. The ultimate white bone prison. Bam! 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 Soon, a series of loud explosion noises sounded within the bone mountain, and some fire could be seen through the tiny slits between bones. Domenech self-detonated in there. Even though the loud explosion shook the bone mountain, it didn't collapse. 3 minutes later, the explosion quieted down, and the dense fire elements started to disperse into the air. Like a candle that got blown out, Domenech's fire of life was extinguished. Faye shook his head and sighed as he sensed the dispersing of the fire elements. Domenech, a mighty Sun-class lord, died just like that. He could have left a significant mark in the history books. He could have grown into one of the most powerful mages on the continent, and he could have become the idol to many other mages. He was capable of so much more. However, the even more powerful Hazelbank lightly waved his hand and killed this mage who had limitless potential. When the explosion happened inside of the White Bone Mountain, Domenech's legendary path was ended before it could unfold. This was the law of the jungle. This was a natural law that made and broke many warriors and mages. Whoosh! 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 Hazelbank waved his hand, and the undead energy dispersed. Then, the white bones that constructed the mountain started to collapse, and they fell back into the sea of bones like water droplets to the ocean. Then, a few clouds of red mist slowly appeared. That was the last mark that Domenech left in this world. After these clouds of red mist disperse, the last bit of evidence that proved Domenech's existence would be gone, and the rest would be history. Faye lightly exhaled, and he got rid of the mix of emotions on his mind. Then he felt extremely joyous. Hazelbank was much stronger than he expected. It was beyond his wildest dreams. How the undead mage easily killed Domenech made Faye wonder who was stronger, Emperor Yasin or Hazelbank. This thought only appeared in Faye's head for a second before disappearing. Your Majesty! The undead mage dashed to Faye and greeted him. It was a formal greeting that subordinates would use toward a lord. Although he didn't say anything, his actions showed Faye that he was swearing his 100% loyalty. What happened a few moments ago was still being replayed in Hazelbank's mind. The scene, where Faye stood in front of him and protected him despite the deadly danger, ironed itself into his soul. Even if the king didn't have the purest form of undead energy, death energy, he would still swear his loyalty. Should we leave the path of the Grim Reaper and find a better place to chat? Faye had many questions that he wanted to ask the undead mage. Hazelbank understood the hidden meaning in Faye's words. He thought about it and replied, "Your Majesty, you don't need to worry. Sun anomalies are parallel universes so that they won't leave any marks in the real world. Therefore, no one can detect the undead energy. Although I just returned to the Sun class realm, maintaining the Sun anomaly won't take too much energy." Sounds good. Faye nodded. Faye gave Hazelbank a quick overview of what happened to him after he entered the level 36 region. He didn't hide the existence of the Sky Castle, but he didn't mention the mysterious stone pillar and the purification of the World Stone. After all, the World Stone connected to Diablo World, the place where Faye's strength and power originated from. A person should always keep some secrets to himself or herself. Afterward, Faye told the undead mage about what happened in Dual Flag City. "That damn Arthur." Hazelbank shook his head and said angrily. In the last few hundred years, Arthur had made several mistakes due to his drinking problem. His bad habit got the best of him again this time. Faye laughed. "That is all right. It wasn't that terrible. If Arthur didn't appear, no one would be able to capture Snow Mountain Hermit and his son Tony." After he said that, he thought of something else and told Hazelbank about how Little Raccoon wasn't injured by the heat energy coming from the orange fire sword. He asked, "Do you know why? This little guy is a little strange." If I'm not wrong, this little demon beast is a rare mutated creature. It can consume the elemental crystal cores to improve its strength. Your Majesty said that it ate a small piece of Domenech's Sun class core. I think it digested that piece of fire elemental crystal core and is now immune to fire." As Hazelbank said that, he rubbed his hands all over Little Raccoon's body despite this little creature's resistance, such as kicks and bites. He even touched Little Raccoon's private parts. In the end, he didn't find anything that could object to his hypothesis. With its two front paws covering its private parts, Little Raccoon squeaked and hid behind Faye. With tears in its eyes, it showed its fangs and waved its paws at the undead mage. "Really?" Faye was quite surprised. "Could it be that I really picked up a powerful demon beast? This little guy is this strong." After hearing Faye's doubts, Little Raccoon jumped onto Faye's shoulder and bulged the little muscles on its front legs, trying to showcase something and prove itself. "It is simple to test my hypothesis." Hazelbank opened his hand, and a cloud of gray mist swirled like a mini tornado in the center of his palm. The cloud of gray mist continued to be compressed, and it turned from a gas form into a liquid form before finally turning into a peanut-sized, jelly-like gray crystal. It was the Sun class core of the undead mage. Once Little Raccoon ate this core crystal, they would be able to test it with undead magic spells. Then, they would know for sure if this little creature possessed the mutated innate ability that Hazelbank was talking about. Under Faye's gaze, Little Raccoon pinched its nose and ate this tiny Sun class core unwillingly. It looked like this crystal core wasn't as tasty as Domenech's. This picky eater rolled its eyes and looked disgusted. Soon, that drunkenness appeared on it. Pia. Little Raccoon fell onto the throne of chaos, burped, and fell asleep while drooling. Faye was a little worried. After he carefully checked its condition and realized that its bodily functions were normal, he calmed down. Just like how a drunk person needed time to process the alcohol in his body, Little Raccoon needed time to digest that little Sun class core. In the meantime, Faye and Hazelbank talked about other topics. The undead mage was really curious about the Sky Castle. It was heard that the Continental Martial Saint Maradona became as dominant as he was because he entered the Sky Castle once when he was young. Other rumors stated that the Sky Castle was able to move around and travel in the void. It was heard that the Sky Castle had made appearances in other ancient ruins and mysterious forbidden areas. Soon, Little Raccoon woke up from the drunkenness and opened its eyes. Hazelbank pointed his finger, and a white bone blade that wasn't sharp hit Little Raccoon's butt. The undead mage controlled his force well, so this blade only lightly touched Little Raccoon. If ordinary creatures got touched by the white bone blade, their flesh would instantly rot away, leaving behind a skeleton. However, Little Raccoon wasn't affected. The abundant undead energy didn't do anything to it. Since its butt was hit, this little guy wasn't pleased. It showed its fang at Hazel Bank as it waved its paws again. It looks like I'm not wrong. This is a rare mutated innate ability? Hazel Bank looked at Little Raccoon with a meaningful expression, and the little guy got scared and hid behind Faye's back with its front paws covering its private parts again. Looks like if we can collect all elemental Sun-class cores, we can create a little monster that is immune to all magic. Although this little guy is weak, its potential of becoming immune to all magic spells is monstrous. It might be of great use in special situations in the future, Hazel Bank said. Faye was thinking of the same time. After verifying Little Raccoon's unique ability, Faye was about to tell Hazel Bank something that he had been pondering for a while. However, at this moment the space started to crumble and shake. A powerful force was crushing down at the path of the Grim Reaper, and Hazel Bank's Sun-class anomaly couldn't hold still anymore. It was about to collapse. What is going on? Faye furrowed his brows and asked, could it be that someone is attacking the path of the Grim Reaper? It doesn't seem like it. The undead mage looked at the cracks that were appearing in the sky and said, after he detected what was happening outside his sun anomaly, he stopped trying to maintain the path of the Grim Reaper and explained, from the look of it, it seems like the time is up. Soon, this space started to collapse, and it returned to the gray mist form. The path of the Grim Reaper disappeared from Faye's sight. Green grasses and blue sky reappeared. The gloominess and the chilliness from Hazel Bank's sun anomaly were gone, and the air was refreshing. There were still marks in the surroundings that were left by the battle between Faye and Domenech. Dashes of deep sword marks on the grassland, the green liquid from the grasses that looked like the blood of the ground, the deep pits that were created by the meteor shower and still had flames burning in them, and the mountains that were broken and cracked. All of this went to show how destructive and how shocking the battle was. When Faye and Hazel Bank both returned to the level 36 region, they found that a ton of pressure was being created in this small world. The natural laws that were clear and calm started to become chaotic, and the space behaved like an active stomach, trying to push out all the unwelcomed guests. Even though Hazel Bank was a mighty Sun-class lord, he couldn't resist against this natural pressure. In contrast, Faye was feeling at ease. The throne of chaos could fight against this pressure. Whenever the terrifying pressure that Hazel Bank couldn't even deal with pushed against Faye, the throne would release a silver energy, dissolving that pressure 4 meters away before it could touch Faye. Time is up. This small world no longer welcomes us. If we want to come back, we would need to wait for another 20 years for the mythical gate to reopen. As Hazel Bank said that, a silver portal appeared in the sky, and the pressure pushed him toward that portal. As a silver light flashed by, he disappeared from this world. Faye didn't choose to stay. He moved, the throne of chaos, and went into the portal that looked identical to the elemental gates on the elemental altar. At the same time, many identical portals appeared in the small world, and many masters were pushed toward the portal. Some people achieved their goals and were willing to leave, but some people didn't and were reluctant. However, the latter group of people couldn't do anything about it. Ha 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 ha. Finally, I advanced. After being stuck at top-tier New Moon for 50 years, I finally became a half-moon elite and gained another 100 years of life. Ha 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 ha. With my previous accumulation of resources, I should have a smooth cultivation process. Someone cried. Damn it. Just a little bit more. Damn. I'm not leaving. Someone roared angrily. I finally got a feel of that level of power. This trip to the mythical palace is worth it. Snake-forming grass, spider pattern powder, snow iron, teardrop gold. Ha ha ha. I'm rich now. I collected so many natural treasures. With them, our Jasso family will be prosperous for another 1,000 years. I need to thank the King of Chambord for this opportunity. Our Jasso family won't forget about this. Farrington, time is up. You advanced to Moon class. It is a good accomplishment. We need to leave now. I want to stay here. If I can stay and cultivate for 10 years, I will become a top-tier master on the continent. Too bad. People with different mindsets went through the portals and disappeared from this world. After the last person got kicked out, this small world returned to its quietness and peacefulness. It was waiting for another group of lucky masters to arrive in 20 years. Buzz, buzz, buzz. After the feeling of traveling through a temporal and spatial tunnel was gone, Faye's eyes lit up as he stood on the elemental altar in the level 34 region. Faye decided to stay stealth using the power of the Throne of Chaos as soon as he got out of the core region, and no one discovered his existence. At the moment, quite a few people were standing on the altar. There were people such as Emperor Yasin and his guards, the Royal Master of Jax and his group, and Crown Prince Gerano of Saint Germain and his maids. They were all the lucky people who got the enter the core region. However, their expressions looked concerning. What is going on? Faye thought as he looked down the altar, and he was a little surprised. More than 100 people were crowding around the altar, and they were unleashing their warrior energy and magic energy. They were all staring at the people on the altar silently, and their eyes showed their envy, greed, and murderous intents. These people were the ones who didn't get to enter the core region. Some of them weren't strong enough to get a spot on the elemental altar, and some of them arrived late despite their strong power. There were more of them, and they surrounded the altar. Faye frowned lightly. He knew what was going to happen. Murders and robberies. There were a ton of treasures in the core region. As long as you were willing to bend your back and reach out your hand, you would be able to get a ton of rare herbs. These people who were inside the core region for several days all had treasures on them, and they were at the center of the attention as if they were billionaires with expensive pieces of jewelry all over them. Although the masters around the altar weren't lucky enough to enter the level 36 region, they were able to kill and rob the masters who were. In this world that was ruled by the law of the jungle, only the most powerful people could enjoy the most precious treasures. Strength was the only way to obtain respect. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Soon, people who entered the core region all appeared on the elemental altar. The atmosphere got tensed up, and the pressure was nerve-wracking. The masters around the altar were looking at the masters on the altar recklessly and greedily. They looked like snakes and jackals who were observing their praise. Their stares were especially murderous when they saw the few weaker masters on the altar. Faye was in stealth and no one discovered. In the beginning, he was worried that the Throne of Chaos might not be able to hide from top geniuses like Emperor Yasin. He was very cautious, and even Little Raccoon covered its mouth with its paws, trying not to make a sound. After Faye carefully ran a few tests, he discovered that the stealth ability of the Throne of Chaos was beyond his imagination. Even if he roared and sang a song, the masters here wouldn't be able to detect him. Faye started to look around casually after making that finding. He still couldn't see through Emperor Yasin. Like a bottomless abyss, one couldn't tell how powerful this emperor was. He was on another level. However, his two guards made progress. They were now both level 9 mid-tier half-moon elites. The Royal Master of Jax, who was friendly toward Faye, improved in strength. Faye estimated that this man was probably somewhere around level 1 top-tier full moon. Beside him, his quiet guard was now mid-tier half-moon. Prince Farrington of Jax, who was only an 8-star warrior before coming here, was now a level 3 low-tier new moon elite. It was a huge jump. Standing next to him, MODOK also experienced a big leap in strength. He was a level 4 low-tier new moon elite before, and now he was a level 7 mid-tier new moon elite. Standing on the outer edge of the altar, there was Crown Prince Gerano of Saint Germain and his 4 maids. Gerano jumped from level 7 mid-tier new moon to level 5 low-tier half-moon, and his 4 beautiful maids were now all between level 1 to level 2 mid-tier new moon. These 5 people's levels increased the fastest, and it was genuinely shocking. Faye guessed that Gerano held more secrets. The elderly masters who were brought into the small world by Faye all got something out of it and experienced an increase in their strengths. However, the increase in their strengths was insignificant compared with people like Gerano. They were now all top-tier new moon elites. These people were relatively weaker, and they were the prime targets for the masters standing around the altar. Kill them. Kill them all. Let's go. They have numerous treasures on them. I even smell the fragrance of precious spiritual herbs. Ha ha ha. There are more of us. There is nothing to be afraid of. Someone shouted around the altar, and the spark ignited the fire. This person was hidden amongst the crowd, and he didn't show his face. He changed his positions and continued to stir up everyone's emotion. His intent was genuinely vicious. However, his dirty trick was very useful in this situation when the atmosphere was intense. Many people were blind by greed, and adrenaline was rushing into their heads. All of them were extremely anxious. Like firewood with gasoline on it, they were easily triggered by the simple provocation. A few people couldn't hold back their emotions and made moves. Hand out your treasures. Ha ha ha. Die. As they laughed viciously, their energies dashed toward the few elderly warriors who were weaker. It was easier to kill them, so they were the targets for everyone. At this moment, a voice sounded, "Humph!" This light snort shocked everyone. They felt like a hammer beat their hearts. The blue figure on the elemental altar made a move unexpectedly. It was Emperor Yasin. The people who just jumped onto the altar didn't have time to react. They were hit by an invisible energy. Before they could even scream, booming noises sounded, and these people exploded like fireworks in the sky. Blood mists were everywhere, and broken limbs and torn flesh flew in every direction. This sudden change shocked everyone who was there. Damn it! He is a murderer. Damn it! How vicious! What are we waiting for? Let's kill this devil and take his treasures. We don't need to fight such a monster in a 1-versus-1 battle. The person who stirred up the crowd shouted again. He continued to move around, making it hard to spot where he was. Whoosh! Emperor Yasin pointed his finger, and a dash of golden sword energy shot out of the altar. Ah! A scream sounded, and that voice stopped. A mid-aged man, who was thin and had small eyes, covered his throat with both of his hands. As a series of dry coughs sounded, he fell back onto the ground unwillingly and died. Emperor Yasin was one of the most powerful people here, and he instantly spotted the person who was stirring up the crowd. The power and domination Emperor Yasin showed stunned almost everyone around the altar. They looked at each other and didn't dare to create a commotion. When Emperor Yasin glanced at them, they felt like their faces were being carved by a blade. No one dared to look back at him, and they all lowered their heads. This is within the territory of Zenit. Anyone who dares to create chaos shall be killed. The cold words and overbearing tone turned the entire area silent. No one dared to object him. Although most of the people didn't know who this blue-haired mid-age man was, Emperor Yasin's domineering presence made the people, who wanted to commit indecent acts in the chaos, feel like they were standing in a freezer. They had to suppress their greed and wait. Let's go! After stunning everyone, Emperor Yasin didn't plan to stay. With his 2 guards behind him, he walked down the elemental altar and toward the exit. The people in his way all moved aside as if he was as terrifying as the most poisonous snake or scorpion. Before he was about to disappear into a far, Emperor Yasin, who had been walking forward calmly, turned around as if he thought of something. He looked at Hazel Bank, who was wearing the Hello Kitty mask, and asked, "Was it you who killed Domenech?" A hint of battle hungriness appeared in his eyes. Since the small world already closed, the people who didn't come out were all killed in there. Domenech still didn't appear, and it told everyone else that he was killed. Out of everyone who was inside the small world, the only person who had the ability to kill Domenech was this mysterious man with the mask on his face. From him, Emperor Yasin sensed an aura that only belonged to Sun-class lords. Hazel Bank nodded. Okay, today isn't convenient for me. I look forward to battling you in the future. Emperor Yasin nodded back. He didn't expect that someone would jump out midway and kill Domenech. It ruined his plans. Although Hazel Bank didn't kill Domenech to mess with him, Emperor Yasin was proud, and he saw this as a challenge. Therefore, this small incident meant that there was going to be a battle between them. However, since Hazel Bank had a powerful aura around him, even Emperor Yasin wasn't 100% sure if he could defeat this man. In addition, he had more things to do at the moment. Therefore, that fight had to be delayed. I look forward to it as well, Hazel Bank replied calmly, not showing any fear. After a snort, Emperor Yasin asked again, "Where is Alexander?" In his opinion, the king of Chambord was powerful and lucky enough to survive in the small world. Therefore, he was curious when he didn't see this talented warrior who was the leading person of the new generation at Zenith. "He left long ago," Hazelbank replied lightly. "Huh? Interesting." Emperor Yasin was a little surprised. Then he smiled and thought of something as he left with the guards. People only let go of their breath they were holding in after Emperor Yasin disappeared into afar, and his sharp metal elemental warrior energy couldn't be detected anymore. The terrifying sensation they were feeling finally left them. In the next moment, the atmosphere in the area got intense again. Without the pressure from Emperor Yasin, the greedy and sinister thoughts appeared in the minds of people who were around the altar again. Although Emperor Yasin threatened everyone and warned them not to make trouble, he was gone now. One phrase from him couldn't hold these people back. After all, the people on the altar all had treasures with them. Whoosh! The royal master of Jax raised his arm, and the sand of earthly anger appeared above his group of 4 people. The orange energy enveloped him, his guard, Farrington, and Modoc. Without a word, they walked down the elemental altar. "Semi-god tier combat weapon?" someone shouted. Through the unique aura and pressure of a semi-god tier combat weapon, someone recognized the danger hidden in this sand grain that was about the size of a fist, and everyone backed off. The combination of a full moon elite and a semi-god tier combat weapon could defeat anyone under the realm of Sun class, and the pure numbers advantage wouldn't work. Therefore, the group of Jacks left safely. Whoosh! 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 Crown Prince Girano of Saint Germain, who was exceptionally handsome, also didn't try to stay around. He waved his black crystal wand, and a cloud of black mist enveloped himself and his 4 maids. They flew 20 meters into the air and dashed toward the level 33 region. Another semi-god tier combat weapon? The masters around the elemental altar all drooled, and they felt like their throats were a bit dry. They didn't dare to stop these people, and they had to watch them leave. Now, the only people on the elemental altar were the undead mage and the 7 elderly warriors who got into the small world because of Faye and Hazelbank. From what Emperor Yasin said, they knew that Hazelbank was way too powerful for them to handle. This person can make that mysterious master concerned? We can't win against him. Therefore, the 7 elderly warriors, who weren't the strongest and didn't have semi-god tier combat weapons, were the lamb in the eyes of the wolves. "You 7, hand over the treasures. I can promise you that we will let you leave here alive." A half-moon elite jumped out and pointed at the 7 elderly warriors as he said with greed, "Old bastards, what are you waiting for? Leave your treasures and get the fuck out. Do you want to die?" Another master stepped forward and threatened. Gradually, more and more masters stepped onto the elemental altar and threatened them. Since they chose to block off the pathway for people who just came out of the core region, most of them weren't friendly and kind people. They were all planning to commit robbery. If it weren't for Emperor Yasin's overbearing attitude, corpses would have pilled on top of each other already. These people had to watch more than 10 people leave, and their greed and murderous spirits couldn't be held back at this moment. "You?" The elderly warriors were livid as their bodies started to shake, but they couldn't do anything about it. Although they achieved breakthroughs in the small world, they couldn't fight against so many people. Some elderly warriors tried to negotiate with these people. They were willing to hand over some treasures, but they wanted to keep some spiritual herbs for themselves to lengthen their lifespan. "No, hand over all of them. If you dare to hide a single treasure from us, you will be killed. Why are we even talking to them? Kill them all. That way, all of their treasures would be ours." "Okay, let's kill them." As murderous spirits surged, some people were planning to attack. Faye, who was hiding in the area, lightly shook his head and sighed. He brought these elderly warriors into the small world because of his sympathy, but he didn't expect that they would be in life-threatening danger because of it. It wasn't a scene that Faye wanted to see. "Fine, since I indirectly placed them in this situation, I will help them once more," Faye thought. The throne of chaos emitted dashes of silver energies, and it appeared on the elemental altar with Fei, blocking the greedy and vicious masters from the 7 elderly warriors. This sudden change shocked everyone. When the beautiful ripples appeared in the area, the people who were about to attack temporarily stopped their actions. A huge, beautiful, and prestigious silver throne slowly appeared out of nowhere, and a handsome young man was sitting on this majestic throne. Although no warrior energy surge or magic energy surge could be sensed from him, others felt like he was mighty and dangerous. On his shoulder, there was a rare treasure-seeking beast. It didn't have any combat ability and was kind of chubby, but it was looking at the people around the altar with a gloating expression on its face. Fei's sudden appearance made the atmosphere strange. "Who are you?" That top-tier half-moon elite carefully observed Fei and asked after he didn't sense any real danger. "Ah, it is the King of Chambord, King Alexander, His Majesty." Before Fei could reply, the elderly warriors already recognized him, and they cheered as if their savior were here. Sitting on the throne in mid-air, Fei nodded at them. These elderly warriors all had good morals, and they were able to withhold their greed and let Fei get the treasures first in the level 36 region. Therefore, Fei had good impressions of them, and getting relationships established with them wasn't a bad idea. "Leave 1/3 of your collections to them, and you guys can go," Fei smiled and said to the 7 elderly warriors. Rather than leaving the people around the altar with no hope, he chose an option that was somewhat in the middle. "As you wish. We will listen to you." The 7 elderly warriors agreed joyously. Being able to keep 2/3 of what they got from the core region was already great enough. However, others weren't happy with Fei's solution. "He. Who do you think you are? How dare you get involved with this? I say no to that. Leave all of what you have. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Kid, fuck off. You need to go back and drink some milk. Not sit on a crappy throne and pretend to be a master. I think you want to die. Fuck off. Wait, let him stay. I think his throne is a treasure as well. Hehe. Maybe he has more treasures on him. Humph. Ridiculous. Are you trying to be the boss in front of us? Punk. Don't even try to leave now." The masters who were blind by greed felt the adrenaline rush, and their eyes were almost bright red. Most of them were used to this lifestyle, and they weren't going to turn around and let go of these 7 elderly warriors when they had great treasures on them. Also, some of the more vicious ones even tried to kill Fei. "Die!" The master in the lead sneered and dashed at Fei. Net-shaped blue energy rushed toward Fei. This man was trying to kill Fei with his ultimate technique right away. "Ah, why is that only blood and death will wake you up?" Fei frowned and instantly disappeared before the blue energy could touch him. "This? No!" This attacker was surprised. Before he could react, he sensed an indefensible energy coming toward him from the back, and crackling noises sounded. His spine broke, and his vision darkened. Like an overblown balloon, his body popped, and flesh flew in all directions. Instant kill. Whoosh! Fei lightly blew off the blood on his fist. When he disappeared in front of that master, he instantly appeared behind him. The insane strength of the nightmare mode barbarian unleashed, and it obliterated this opponent. Fei didn't show any mercy this time. When Fei used all his strength, even the Sun-class Lord Domenech suffered, let alone this Moon-class elite. Hiss! Many masters gasped, and shock couldn't be hidden from their faces. Killing a top-tier half-moon elite with only one strike? Everyone here today knew that they couldn't do the same. Now, they knew that this young man, who had no warrior energy surge or magic energy surge on him, was actually an insanely powerful and ruthless person. Some of them started to swallow their saliva and slowly backed off. They were all stunned by Fei's shocking strike. "Let's go. There is only one of him. Can he kill us all?" Someone hidden in the crowd tried to stir up the masters. "Yeah, I don't think he could stop all of us. Let's go and kill these 7 old men. We will be rich even if we can only get one 1,000-year-old spiritual herb." There was more than one person who tried to create a commotion. The situation that Fei stabilized started to get out of hand again. After all, the world wasn't short on reckless gamblers. "Humph! You think I don't dare to kill you all?" Faye's tone got cold. In the next moment, Faye and the Throne of Chaos disappeared. Then, a series of afterimages appeared in the crowd. Even though these masters were all influential people in the outside world, they couldn't catch Faye's trajectory and movement patterns. Bam! 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 As these masters were terrified, many muffled noises sounded, and clouds of blood mist appeared. The people who tried to stir up the crowd were all killed without exception, and they were turned into pieces. None of them had the ability to fight back. Terrifying, shocking, invincible. An unstoppable chill ran up everyone's spine, and they felt like they were all in a freezer. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After a few seconds of pause, people started to back off as a group. Like a flock of scared birds, they all rushed back as they looked at Faye as if he was a demon. Ah, demon. He is a demon. The Grim Reaper. God, save us. After a moment of silence, a pale-faced young man couldn't stand it anymore. He suddenly screamed and ran off. The bloody scenes terrified him, and he experienced a mental collapse. Then more than a dozen people ran off as well. They didn't dare to look at Faye, and they escaped without a word. Okay, is there anyone else who doesn't agree with my plan? Faye questioned the crowd after killing the troublemakers. The king now had complete control of the situation. As his voice resonated in the area, no one dared to disagree anymore. The masters lowered their heads timidly, not showing their viciousness anymore. It felt like they turned from wolves into sheep, and they all showed their willingness to listen to Faye. With Faye's current plan, they would at least get something. It was much better than seeking their own death. The 7 elderly warriors on the elemental altar were so excited that their bodies started to shake. They all listened to Faye's words, took out 1/3 of their collections, and placed them on the ground. Instantly, the aroma and fragrance of spiritual herbs filled the air. There were many precious and rare herbs, and lights shone around them. Their thick fragrance even covered the intense smell of blood. The 70-ish masters around the altar all drooled, and their eyes almost popped out of their eye sockets. Some of these herbs could lengthen lifespans, some of them were the main ingredients in godly elixirs, some of them could enhance warrior energy and magic energy, some of them could cure obscure illnesses, and some of them could heal all kinds of injuries. Also, the rare metals and powders from the core region could be used to forge top-tier combat weapons, and even semi-god-tier combat weapons. They were all very expensive. The crowd got heated, and some people started to get impulsive again. However, since Faye was here, no one dared to cause more trouble. Faye sat on the throne of chaos, comfortably, and looked around, distributing the rare materials, herbs, and treasures into people's hands according to their different elemental warrior and magic energies. No one dared to disrupt this process. Your Majesty, my master is dying due to his age, and I'm here to find him a subwild grass to extend his life. Can I trade this rare 1,000-year-old water elemental herb for a subwild grass? A man in his 40s asked sincerely after some hesitation. He was a low-tier half-moon elite, and he was wearing a rough cloak and looked unflinching. Sure. Faye waved his hand, and a subwild grass on the altar flew into this man's hand and switched out the herb he had. Thank you. Thank you very much. God bless you, Your Majesty. This man thanked Faye earnestly. After seeing this, the masters who didn't dare to speak started to tell Faye what they needed timidly. What Faye distributed to them weren't exactly what they currently wanted or needed. Faye listened to them and switched the items they got patiently, trying to satisfy them all. At this moment, he displayed a level of patience that was rare to see on people. Hazelbank just watched from the side. He wanted to help the king, but he stopped midway after seeing that the king got it under control. He felt like this young man could always come up with innovative solutions that could achieve the best results. An hour later, most of the masters in the area got what they wanted after Faye acted as the moderator and switched up the items. In the beginning, they were resentful toward Faye for ruining their business. But now, they were all happy since most of them got what they wanted. They thanked Faye and left the mythical palace happily. Of course, some of them were going to kill each other for the treasures after they get out of this place, but that was out of Faye's control. One thing for sure was that the king of Chambord was going to be known in the circle of masters starting now. Perhaps not for long. Even normal people would know that a handsome young king who was invincible and tactical was creating his own legend in the northern region of Azeroth. Soon, only Faye, Hazelbank, and the other 7 elderly warriors were left on the altar. You guys can come with me. The core region is closed, and the rest of the 34 regions will be closing soon. It is time to go. It is not too safe on the way back. Since we are all going back to Dual Flag City, I can protect you guys on the way. Faye waved his hand, and the throne of chaos floated 1 meter above the ground and dashed toward the level 33 region. Ah, thank you. Your Majesty. The 7 elderly warriors all thanked him. They were worried that some greedy and vicious masters might ambush them, and they were all thrilled after hearing what Faye said. On the way back, there were some masters who hid in the structures beside the streets. There were more than a dozen people hidden around with murderous spirits on them. However, these guys were disappointed when they saw Faye beside the 7 elderly warriors. They knew that they couldn't handle the king, so none of them were stupid enough to show themselves. Therefore, Faye and his crew quickly left through the mythical gate and returned to the underground ocean. In less than 10 minutes, they returned to Dual Flag City by traveling through the water wells. The sun never seemed so lovely in these 7 elderly warriors' eyes, and even the chilly wind wasn't that bad anymore. Ah, we came out of there alive, the 7 of them sighed. If they didn't encounter Faye, their savior, they might not even get the chance to enter that small world. They were all old and on the verge of death. Before coming here, they already accepted the fact that they might die in another place far away from their families. They traveled for more than tens of thousands of kilometers to come here to try out their luck, and Faye's generosity turned their lives around, giving them a second opportunity. In order to show our gratitude, please allow us to give half of our collections to you. The most senior warrior among the 7 elderly warriors bowed at Faye and said emotionally, "Yeah, Your Majesty, please accept our goodwill. This is the only way that we could come up with to show our gratitude." That is right. We are far from you in terms of talent and strength, but our families are still somewhat influential in the region. If Your Majesty needs anything, our Jashuo family will try our best to help out. The elderly warriors all took out half of their collections from their storage spaces, and they also took out their family's badges to give to Faye as tokens and keepsakes. Faye didn't refuse. After some consideration, he took a few precious herbs and rare metals. Since the king had the throne of chaos, he could come and go from the core region of the mythical palace and get anything he wanted. Then, he took the badges as they might be helpful in the future. After some discussion, the 7 elderly warriors decided to stay in Dual Flag City for now. After they settled down, they would send back messengers to their families and wait for their family forces to come and guard them back. Since they had treasures on them, their way home wouldn't be peaceful. They might be robbed, and Faye couldn't protect them along the way. Faye and Hazelbank didn't return to the new palace after saying farewell to the 7 elderly warriors. Instead, they slowly walked on the road beside the water wells. Both of them were powerful and had control over some fundamental natural laws, and the people walking by them couldn't hear their voices and didn't pay any attention to them. "Your Majesty, do you have something that you want to tell me?" Hazelbank asked after they walked together for a while. He knew that the king wanted to talk to him about something. Faye nodded. "There is one thing that I need to discuss with you." Faye told Hazelbank about his encounter with the Blackcloth Shrine and Bodistuda. In the end, he said, "Right Deacon Bodistuda invited me to join their shrine, and he is still waiting for my response in the city. I want to hear your opinion before I make any decision." "I'm sure you already made the decision, right?" The undead mage smiled and said meaningfully. Faye didn't try to hide it, so he said, "You were right. I already have some basic ideas. However, yours and Arthur's opinions are important to me as well. After all, we met first before the Blackcloth Shrine, and there needs to be an order. I already promised Your Majesty that Arthur and I would follow your directions unconditionally," Hazelbank said firmly as he looked at the blue sky. "Putting everything else aside, I also think that joining the Blackcloth Shrine is a good option for Your Majesty, Angela Her Highness, and Chambord. If your majesty wants to start implementing that plan you told me about in the Death Ancient City, starting within the Holy Church might not be a bad idea. So, you actually don't mind me joining the Blackcloth Shrine? Faye was quite surprised by Hazelbank's response. To be honest, I thought your hatred toward the Holy Church would make you sensitive about this topic. I'm more than 400 years old, and I have been through a lot. I can overlook the matters on the surface and see the underlying principles. Hazelbank paused before continuing. Actually, I'm more interested in your majesty's way of thinking. If I don't know your age, I would think that you have lived for many years as well. Many of your ideas can only be understood by people who have lived through life. Faye smiled and didn't say anything. Hazelbank's instinct was genuinely accurate. Faye had once lived on Earth, and his value system and belief system were formed there. Therefore, he was quite different from the people in this world, and saying that he had lived for many years wasn't an overstatement. After getting the yes from the undead mage, Faye had no other worries. He exhaled deeply and felt a lot more at ease. They separated afterward. Hazelbank wanted to wander around the city alone and feel the lives of ordinary people. Also, he wanted to find the undead bone dragon who had been drunk for many days now. Faye, on the other hand, went to the watchtower on the west gate. Huh? The enemies of Jax are retreating. Before Faye could grab a set, Rybri rushed over to give him the newest report. That's right. We had noticed strange behaviors of the soldiers of Jax 3 days ago, and our scouts had been monitoring them. This morning, they reported that the troops of Jax had secretly retreated before midnight last night, and they left an empty campsite. Rybri told Faye as he handed over an official report. Rybri was quite surprised by the retreat of the enemies. At this moment, the good news from Spartak's battle zone and Eindhoven battle zone weren't delivered to Jack's battle zone yet, so the generals didn't know why. Looks like this war is finally over, Faye thought as he lightly knocked the table with his finger rhythmically. As Zenith's god of war, Arshavin, shone on the battlefield, he conquered the Spartak's empire, the nemesis of Zenith. Then, without its Emperor Kromkamp, the Eindhoven Empire was almost conquered with only its capital still resisting. The wars between Zenith and the other 3 level 1 empires, Spartax, Eindhoven, and Jax, were about to be over. Zenith, the ferocious white bear, had complete control of the battle zones in the south and southwest. The Jax Empire probably received news from the other battle zones, and they decided to back off after some calculations. It was clear that with the strong return of Emperor Yasin, who was rumored to be dying, and the dominating power Zenith showcased in the other 2 battle zones, the Zenith Empire could potentially become a level 2 or even a level 3 empire. However, how long could this all last? Would there be another more vicious battle after this temporary victory? Would the most powerful empire in the region, the Leon Empire, allow Zenith to exist and grow despite the threats? Faye suddenly laughed and shook his head. I'm overthinking this. I will just leave these issues to the royal family and Emperor Yasin. What I need to do now is to bring the soldiers and warriors of Chambord back home. We have left our home for so long, and it is time to see the Chambord Castle after the renovation and reconstruction. 3 days later, the cold winter had passed by, and the feeling of spring was spreading on the northern land. This was a region where there were quite a few hills. The yellow and dry grasses started to get a feint of greenness in them, and it was quite refreshing. The wind wasn't that dry anymore. Instead, it was a little humid. Suddenly, a flag that had an image of a 2-headed dog which bit onto an axe and a blade on it appeared in a valley. The spring wind fluttered this strange-looking yet majestic flag, and it looked like a black dragon that was trying to break away. Then, the muscular cavalier who was holding the flag appeared. This man was huge, and he was riding a level 4 roaring flame beast that was howling. Its eyes were bloody red, and its teeth were sharp. The red hair on its body lightly concealed the shiny scales under it, and flames could be seen around its hooves. When it ran, it looked like it was flying on top of red clouds. After the cavalier made an appearance, a team of more than 300 cavaliers appeared. There were 20 other cavaliers who were just as muscular and big as the first cavalier, and they were also riding level 4 roaring flame beast. They were in a V-shaped formation, and they protected the cavaliers on horses in the center. Closer to the front of the team, there was a giant black beast that was more than 6 meters tall and about 16 meters long from head to tail walking with them. On the back of this huge dragon-like beast, there was a majestic silver throne with statues of warriors and goddesses around it. A handsome young man was sitting on the throne, and he had a beautiful black-haired girl in his arms. As a small animal danced in front of them, this young man leaned over to the girl and whispered something into her ear, making she giggle continuously. The chubby raccoon-like animal was wearing a grass skirt, and it was wriggling its butt and hula dancing unwillingly. 3 huge beasts that were more than 10 meters long flew in the sky. They were red, blue, and green, and they were letting out cheerful cries as they enjoyed the wind. Their voices contained a little pressure and holiness, and the animals in the forests all shivered and fled at the sound of them. It was clear that this was Chambord's troop. After the war in the Jack's battle zone was over, they were finally on their way home after leaving the Chambord kingdom for about 5 months. Angela, tell those 3 little over-energetic idiots to quiet it down. If they continue, our horses will be terrified and have mental issues, Faye said to Angela. Sitting on the throne of chaos that was temporarily set on Black's back, Faye raised his head and looked at the 3 small dragons in the sky. Then, he turned around and looked at the war horses that were so terrified that white foams came out of their mouths. There had been more than a dozen horses that were experiencing mental issues because of the 3 dragons' irregular roars. That was right. 3 dragons. When Hazelbank saw the 3 creatures 3 days ago, he also screamed. As someone who had been around for more than 400 years, he instantly identified them as dragons that had been extinct on the continent. So far, they only made appearances in the stories told by the traveling poets. This information shocked the king at first, but he was soon thrilled. Who knew that the 3 stone eggs I bought from an old man who was shivering in the cold could give life to these 3 dragons? I only paid a few hundred gold coins. Dragons. Ha ha ha, after Thug, Chick, and Hooligan grow up, I can train them and create 3 dragon knights, right? Wait, isn't Chick a female dragon? If Chick could mate with Thug or Hooligan, they could create a bunch of little dragons. But are they siblings? I hope not. The king thought to himself, and he felt like his idea was too much. Therefore, he had to give up the idea of creating hundreds of dragon knights. They just learned how to fly, and they want to have more fun, Angela replied as she covered her snickering with her hand. Then she waved at the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 dragons flew down. However, since their landing skills weren't that good, they smashed onto the ground. 3 deep pits were created, and clouds of dust appeared. This kind of smashes was nothing to these 3, and they weren't injured at all. They crawled out of the pits and all squatted down, reaching out their front limbs and sticking out their tongues. With their tails wriggling, they looked like 3 big dogs that were begging for treats. Faye covered his eyes. He was at a loss for words. Having no parents, they learned everything from Blackie, and they were behaving just like dogs. They didn't seem like dominating dragons at all. Angela took out 4 low-tier magic gems, and she threw them into the air. 1 magic gem fell into Thug, Chick, and Hooligan's mouths each, and Blackis stuck out its tongue and licked away the last one. These 4 creatures didn't know how expensive it was to feed them, and they chewed on the magic gems like delicious bones. Faye's heart was bleeding. In the last few days, the number of magic gems entered their stomachs was enough to create at least 10 3-star mages. It was such a luxury to feed pets with magic gems, and it could be considered a crime. In order to fully activate the Throne of Chaos, Cain used up all of the magic gems Faye accumulated, and Faye turned from a millionaire into a broke man. Therefore, he had to create a few top-tier magic gems using Horadric Cube, and he converted them into about 10,000 low-tier magic gems to keep up with the spending. However, these 4 beasts almost ate all the low-tier magic gems these days. In the end, the energy and investment didn't go to waste. After eating the magic gems, the 3 dragons' body sizes increased a lot. Their strengths were comparable to New Moon elites, and they were almost the top fighters in Chambord. Blackie, on the other hand, could now spit fire after consuming many magic gems. under the empowerment of Hulk Potion and the magic gems. This dog was evolving in an unknown direction. After eating, the three dragons followed Blackie as they stuck out their tongues and wriggled their tails. The sun is about to set. There is a lake in the front and we can camp here tonight. Faye waved his hand and called over Torres. Fernando, pass my order to set up the camp. As you wish. The night quickly enveloped the world. Even though it was already spring, the night was still cold. However, compared with the chilliness in the desert, it was a lot better. There were still ice pieces flowing on the lake, and the surface of the lake reflected the campfires and the people around it. Not too far away, Blackie and the three dragons were still playing in the lake and splashing water around. It seems like they didn't have enough fun yet. Jessica, you must be tired. His Majesty asked me to bring you some delicious food. As the flames flickered, a dark-skinned and muscular man walked to a green square rock by the lake with a food box in his hand. A young girl was sitting on the rock, looking absent-minded. Emile, it is okay. I'm not tired, and please thank His Majesty for me, the girl replied. She was wearing a very expensive coat made from the fur of a white snow mink king, and the soft coat emphasized her delicate skin and beautiful face. When she looked at the surface of the lake with her crystal-like eyes, her expression was a little sad. She was Jessica, the only female manager of Soros Merchant Group in Dual Flag City. After becoming one of the most influential people in the branch, this girl who used to live in the poor neighborhood turned from an ugly duckling to a swan. Like a polished diamond, her brilliance was eye-catching. She was beautiful, smart, and capable, making her the most popular girl in Dual Flag City. Some imaginative traveling poets wrote poems after seeing Jessica, saying that out of more than 60,000 males in Dual Flag City, except for the babies who were still drinking milk, at least 40,000 males viewed Jessica as their dream lover. In the last while, it was heard that many young noblemen and successful warriors drooled over her, and the people who wanted to propose to her once filled and blocked the pub she was working at. There were also more powerful people who ignored manager Abramovich and tried to get Jessica for themselves by using their influence. However, the story took a 180-degree turn after some people said that Jessica's brother was working as the king of Chambord's guard, and the king cared about Jessica. Instantly, everyone stopped their actions and held back their desires. None of them dared to provoke this dominating young king who just killed the leaders of the 7 top-tier noble families not too long ago. In fact, most of the influential figures in Dual Flag City saw Jessica as the king of Chambord's woman. It was clear that the dark-skinned and muscular man was Husky Emile, who was recruited by Faye. When the troop of Chambord left Dual Flag City, Faye brought this simple-minded but pure young man with him after getting consent. Jessica, his sister, was being sent to Chambord by manager Abramovich to establish a new branch. Abramovich had his plans. By sending Jessica, who was already friends with the king of Chambord, to the Chambord kingdom, it would maintain the relationship between him and Faye. Instead of growing apart due to the long distance, he was helping Chambord's economy by investing in it, making their relationship tighter. This way, Husky and Jessica didn't need to separate as brother and sister, and it wasn't a bad arrangement. Brother, why did the royal family and the military headquarters pull away His Majesty's title as the Legion Commander of Wolf Teeth Legion? Didn't His Majesty do a good job? They didn't give His Majesty that many soldiers. If His Majesty didn't stop the invaders of Jax, Dual Flag City might have been conquered. Every single person in Dual Flag City is thankful for His Majesty's work. What the royal family and the military headquarters did is truly disappointing, Jessica said as she pouted. She threw a small piece of rock into the lake, and it created a series of ripples. Husky laughed and scratched his head. Although he had been following Faye for the last while, he didn't pay attention to anything else except for Faye's safety. In Faye's words, Husky's head was filled with muscle and a tiny bit of brain. He was too simple to think about all the complicated matter. I heard that Crown Prince Arshavin and His Majesty have some conflicts. Therefore, he ordered the military headquarters to mess with His Majesty. Husky used all he got and vaguely came up with a reasonable explanation. Arshavin, His Highness? Really? A genius like Arshavin, His Highness should appreciate someone like Mr. Alexander. No? They are the two most talented young men in Zenit. People are saying that although Emperor Yasin is ill, Zenit is lucky to have them too. After Arshavin, His Highness becomes the Emperor, Mr. Alexander could become the #1 warrior of the Empire and help him. Jessica looked at her brother and asked, "Brother, did you hear it wrong?" "No, no." Husky quickly shook his head. After he looked around and made sure that no one was close by, he walked up and whispered, 3 days ago, when the special envoy from the military headquarters arrived at Dual Flag City, I was with His Majesty and witnessed the whole thing. That damn envoy was very arrogant, and he was not polite at all. He said that the military headquarters was very displeased by the progress at the Jax battle zone. His tone was very stern. After he stripped away His Majesty's titles, he told other people in private that Emperor Yasin no longer values His Majesty, and Second Prince Dominguez, who supports His Majesty, also lost in the Battle of the Throne. Except for Crown Prince Arshavin, who has issues with His Majesty, a few noble families and Fourth Prince Crystal are also trying to cause trouble for His Majesty. They hate His Majesty. Since His Majesty killed the leaders of the 7 noble families, they are going to use that against him. Once His Majesty is convicted, the consequences might be too severe to overcome. What? That's serious. Jessica was shocked. She jumped up and said anxiously, "Does His Majesty know about this?" "No, I need to tell him." Before she could finish, she rushed toward the king's tent. Husky was surprised. He grabbed onto his sister's wrist and said, "Jessica, wait. His Majesty already knows about it. Think about it. This is something that even I know. How could His Majesty not know about it?" Jessica thought about it and flushed. She was a smart girl. Although she only got into the affluent circle recently, her mind was a lot broader. Manager Abramovich taught her well, so she was able to think everything through in a short moment. For some reason, as soon as she heard that Faye might be in danger, she lost her cool and logic. Her heart raced and she got very worried. She wanted to tell that person all about it. Touching her burning cheeks, she peeked at her simple-minded brother and realized that he didn't discover anything. She calmed down a little, and she couldn't help but ask, "Does His Majesty have a way to deal with it? If? Husky scratched his head habitually and laughed. "I'm not sure if His Majesty has solutions, but I feel like His Majesty isn't worried. Just like how a giant won't worry about the provocation coming from ants, it feels like His Majesty is too great for them. If the giant wants, he could destroy the ants easily." I'm not sure if my analogy is appropriate, but I think it is right. Jessica laughed and shook her head after seeing her brother's naive expression. Although Husky's analogy was exaggerating, it brought this girl a strong sense of security. She felt like she was overconcerned. Alexander, His Majesty, is extremely talented. How could he be hindered by the corrupt and stupid nobles? She thought. She looked back at the reflections on the surface of the lake, and she went back to her deep thoughts. For some reason even unknown to herself, she felt a little sad. "Jessica, eat the food first. The dishes will be cold." Husky didn't sense his beautiful sister's mind, so he simply took out the dishes from the magic food box that could keep everything warm and placed them in front of Jessica. In the campsite, campfires lit up the sky. The warriors and soldiers of Chambord sat around the campfire, and their loud laughter resonated in the area. Priest Jesse, the most talented young priest in Blackcloth Shrine, was sitting by the campfire that was closest to the lake. This brown short-haired young man was using a tree branch that was more than a meter long to play with the burning campfire. As the fire flickered, his face was illuminated differently at every moment. It seemed like he was thinking about a very difficult problem. Beside him, Holy Knight Alan was quite relaxed. He was eating a roasted fish, and the aroma of the white fish meat was intriguing, adding flavor to the night. Jesse and Alan were both lucky and unfortunately. They were lucky enough to enter the core region of the mythical palace, but Domenech injured them before they could get any treasures. Also, Faye took them out of the core region before it closed, so their strengths also didn't increase that much. 3 days ago, when Faye met with Batistuta and agreed to join Blackcloth Shrine, the king got a new identity. He was now the bishop of this shrine that was once glorious and powerful. Before Batistuta went back to the headquarters of Blackcloth Shrine to prepare for the official coronation, he asked Jesse and Alan to stay with Faye and act as the bishop's servants. Faye was happy to have two more powerful masters with him. Jesse was now a mid-tier half-moon elite, and his addition to Chambord was a great thing. Jesse, don't frown all the time. Eat something. You haven't eaten for the whole day. Alan had white hair just like Pierce, and the short hair stood on his head like iron spikes. He looked energetic, and he passed a sauced-up roasted cod to Jesse as he smiled. Alan, I think the headquarters of the shrine is going to be moved to the Chambord Castle once Alexander His Majesty is coronated. I'm afraid that the other shrines in the northern region would pay a lot of attention to us by then. All sorts of obstacles and issues will come. Also, Platini, the bishop of the Northern Regional Church, and the Senate need to approve the coronation. There are a lot of issues ahead of us. Jesse took a bit of the roasted fish, but he didn't have the appetite. Jesse, you are overthinking it, Mr. Batistuta and the elders will handle all of this, and Alexander His Majesty isn't dumb either. Alan lowered his voice and whispered, I think in the end, you are just not confident in our new bishop, right? A bitter smile appeared on Jesse's face. Alan was right. Jesse was the child of a family of Blackcloth Shrine's believers, and he demonstrated talent in cultivating holy power since a young age. Blackcloth Shrine paid attention to him since he was 4 years old, and he was taught by elders in the shrine such as Batistuta and Toddy. He was taught the code of the Blackcloth Shrine, and he tightly measured his actions and words according to the code. Therefore, you could say that Jesse was a person who held others to high standards, but his standards for himself was even higher. Therefore, having a wild God-favorite child, like the king of Chambord, to become the bishop of Blackcloth Shrine was too much for him to take in at once. Even though people like Batistuta tried to open his mind, but he still couldn't accept it that easily. However, he had to listen to the orders of the elders. Besides, the oracle stated that the God-favorite children had the qualification of becoming bishops of the shrines. The only thing that confused Jesse was that why did the gods choose the king of Chambord, who never behaved according to the code of the Holy Church, as a God-favorite child? To Jesse, the conflict in terms of beliefs felt worse than losing his life. The gods are never wrong. Perhaps my understanding of the code isn't good enough. My path of cultivation is still long, and I might be able to grasp the truth by following Alexander His Majesty. As the young priest was still bothered by his thoughts, the warriors of Chambord such as Drogba and Pierce were swearing and insulting Andrew Arshavin, Zenith's god of war who was being loved by the people in the empire. Humph! Fuck that man. He is only a con artist. If the 5 main battle legions were given to His Majesty would be able to conquer the Spartax Empire and the Eindhoven Empire easily. After all, there are 150,000 elite soldiers there. Drogba said ferociously as he bit into the delicious roast boar leg in his hand. He was furious and he was calling Arshavin names. You are right. Alexander His Majesty is able to stop for 70,000 elite soldiers of Jax for 40 days with a legion that is recently made. He even killed a powerful master called Snow Mountain Hermit, and suppressed all the masters who were there for the mythical palace. Can he, the Crown Prince, do it? The other tough man of Chambord, Pierce, also raised his voice and shouted, Humph! I heard that Crown Prince Arshavin let his subordinates handle the southwest battle zone, and he went back to the capital. He is planning to use this victory momentum to fight for the throne with Dominguez His Highness. People are saying that he accused Alexander His Majesty of prolonging the war, ruling the dual flags city like an emperor, killing nobles of Zenith, and secretly getting in touch with the enemies of Jax. Torres said. After hearing all kinds of rumors recently, he who was usually calm couldn't hold back as well. The Crown Prince is trying to fight with His Majesty clearly. Damn! What an ungrateful pig. If His Majesty didn't save him on the peak of the East Mountain at Chambord, he would have been killed by Paris? I heard that the situation at St. Petersburg is a mess. Almost all the nobles are supporting the Crown Prince. Under the planning of the elder princess, Arshavin is pretty much in control, and the second prince is in danger. He experienced quite a few assassination attempts now already. Damn! This elder princess. What is she thinking? His Majesty treated her well, and she is helping Arshavin to fight Shambord. Eh? The elder princess? She didn't do anything. What do you know? If the elder princess didn't allow it, how could so many noble families jump out and accuse His Majesty of wrongdoings? In my opinion, we should go back to St. Petersburg. With His Majesty's strength, who could stop us? We shall kill all those nobles who dare to bully us. After that, we can see who else dares to accuse us. The discussion soon got out of hand, and all sorts of treasonous things were said. At this moment, a person slowly walked by and dried cough to get their attention. After he got everyone's attention, he stared at the few warriors of Shambord who said outrageous things and scolded. Do you even know what you were talking about? If there are spies around and what you said are passed back to the Imperial Night Palace, all of you would be captured and hung in the Black Prison. Do you think that the situation is not chaotic enough? Don't get His Majesty into more troubles. The person speaking was the strategist for Shambord, Old Ariang. Although Old Ariang joined Shambord pretty late, all of the leaders of Shambord respected him and listened to him after spending time with him in the Jax battle zone. His military knowledge and charisma drew them over. In addition, since Fei showed his respect to him and relied on him, he had a lot of influence over the warriors of Shambord. After hearing what he said, people like Drogba and Pierce knew that they went over the line, and they giggled and lowered their heads. If I could only describe the situation of Zenit with only one word, it would be chaotic. If I need to describe it with 2 words, it would be super chaotic. No one knows what is going to happen next. His Majesty is wise and patient, and that was why His Majesty chose to hold back his anger 3 days ago. His Majesty is kind, and he doesn't want to drag Shambord into wars. You guys are the earliest followers of His Majesty, and His Majesty trusts you guys the most. Therefore, you need to be extra patient at a time like this and not ruin His Majesty's plans. Old Ariang felt like his tone earlier was a bit too stern, so he changed to a gentler tone as he reminded the warriors of Shambord. People like Drogba and Pierce were all straightforwarded, and they didn't mind the scolding at all. Fatty Oleg instantly moved a little and made a spot for Old Ariang to sit down. They all wanted to listen to the strategist's analysis of the situation. Out of the 3 battle zones, Jack's battle zone is the only battle zone where the troops of Zenit didn't make a counterinvade. Therefore, it made His Majesty look bad. Also, in order to unite the forces in Dual Flag City early on, His Majesty killed the leaders of the 7 biggest noble families, and that created some weaknesses for ill-intended people to exploit. If the people who are hostile toward His Majesty could control the public opinion and influence the narrative in the elite circles, there will be a lot of issues for Shambord in the future. Old Ariang sat down and analyzed in detail. Right now, Arshavin, Zenit's god of war, got the victory in the southern battle zone, and he is now the hero in the minds of the citizens. Many nobles favor him, and his influence greatly increased. Also, he got the support of the military headquarters. Out of the 10 old main battle legions, he controls 6 of them, and he is going to control 4 out of the 10 new battle legions. He is in a dominating position in the fight for the throne. If nothing else happens after Emperor Yasin, who has been ill, passes away, the crown prince is going to become the emperor. However, this hero of the empire is hostile toward His Majesty. If Arshavin actually becomes the emperor, Shambord would be in trouble. The reason why His Majesty got the title of the head commander of the Jax battle zone and the legion commander of Wolf Teeth Legion stripped away is that Arshavin accused His Majesty of wrongdoings in the most recent conference in the military headquarters. Since the Crown Prince has so much influence over the military at the moment, his opinions could instantly become orders. Therefore, the head commander of the Jax battle zone is now Arshavin's loyal subordinate Abanla. The native soldiers in Dual Flag City are going to be reorganized, and people like Mr. Rybri who strongly favored His Majesty aren't going to be in a good situation. Also, the Wolf Teeth Legion, who was created and led by His Majesty, will be reorganized as well. The chance of all the soldiers and commanders being discharged is quite high. In fact, it is heard that Mr. Rybri has been discharged from his position as the head commander of the native troops, and the military headquarters is going to appoint someone else to take his position. Also, high-level commanders in Wolf Teeth Legion who favored Shambord such as Mr. Shevchenko, Mr. Reyes, and Miss Cindy were all ordered to go back to their affiliated kingdoms to reflect on their mistakes. Everything is showing that some people have detected the threats His Majesty posed, and they wanted to get rid of the threats immediately. I'm afraid that what is happening right now is only the foreplay. More despicable and dirty tricks are going to be used. Old Ariang paused after saying all that. The warriors of Chambord looked at each other and didn't know how to respond. After a while, Torres asked as he played with his bowstring while a flash of cold light appeared in his eyes. Mr. Advisor, what should we do? Nothing at the moment. Lights of wisdom appeared in old Ariang's eyes as he said lightly. Although the situation looks dangerous, as long as you guys don't cause more trouble for His Majesty, there won't be any big problems. Although it seems like His Majesty is backing off, we aren't in the disadvantage. Almost no one in Zenith could threaten His Majesty. If I'm not wrong, His Majesty's strength is on an unimaginable level. He is pretty much invincible at Zenith.